Okay, now that I've got the fit skeleton placed basically where I want it, I need to add the extra joints to it. So these are going to be the joints for this chest device here and this here, and probably the crazy joints I'm going to try to put for the head rig thing. I could even go so far as to add a joint for the phone, this phone particular thing, or the control console or whatever it is. If, for instance, like when he tapped on it, I wanted it to move or shift or move around a little bit. So I might do that as well. What's going to happen there, though, is it's going to actually put a joint. If I do it on this one, since it's asymmetry, it's going to add another joint over here when I do the flip. So I might make that a secondary thing after I've already done the fit skeleton. So we'll see. We'll explore. First things first, though. Let's get the chest set up right. So I'm going to do that by coming in my side view. Make a joint. Now, because I want a control on this, I'm definitely going to use the little end effector style joint chain. You'll notice that I didn't link it to anything. I didn't connect it to the chest yet. And I just put it there. Now, if I want to get a control on it, I need both of these. If I just want it to be a holding joint, I'm just going to leave one. And the reason you do that is because to get the two, that's going to give you your axes. Here, let me make these a little bit bigger so I can see them. All right. Then off of this one, I'm probably going to want to run something down from there. Well, I'm gonna put one here and then maybe here. 1, 2, 1, 2, maybe 3. I might do 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay. So to do that, I'm literally just going to name this first chest joint. Or actually no, because I've already got a chest. I'm going to call this CH box. All right. And I'm going to CH box 2. All right, 1 and then 2. So I'm going to grab that and I'm going to dupe it. And now I'm going to move it off center to there. This is where a kind of placement gets a little fun. So I want to put it generally there. And I'm going to offset you this way. And so if I grab that and update, you'll notice that I don't get any updates to the axes, and that's because these things aren't parented to it. So if I want to adjust the local rotation axes, I actually need to do it with the orient control, which is right here. Da, da, da. Da, da, da. There we go. All right. So now that I got this one, I'm going to rename this. And I'm going to rename this to right tube joint. And this one's going to be right tube joint 1. Okay. Dupe it. And I'm going to move it down. Again, kind of thinking about where I want that control to be for the mass. How I want the weights to be held. Okay. And then I don't want to control underneath here to move it. I think these two will be enough. So I'm going to use just a holding joint for that down there, I think. You want to make sure all your names are unique. That's really important. 1, 2, 3. You know what? I'm gonna leave it. I'll leave a control on it just to have it. All right, and then we're gonna do the same thing with this one. That one. Okay. All right. So now I got to get them to be part of the fit skeleton. So what I can do is I can literally just parent each one of these to the chest, because that's primarily where it's going to be rotated or controlled from. So I just do that and hit parent. So I can control them independently of one another. Now, because this one's on 0 on X, it probably will not create a second joint. We'll see. All right, so I've got that set up just fine. All right, so now what's nice about that is it put everything in the proper area. All right, so now I need to think about how I want to control this ring. And where do I want joints for it? I think I'm going to use broad controls, so I'm going to do one in the back. I'm going to do 4 quadrants. One back, front, side. All right, so let's start right here. So I'm going to draw one there, and then I'm going to go upward like that. I'm going to call this collar joint. Okay. And again, check the rotation. Boom. Okay. So that's probably want to call this like front collar. And then I'm going to do a back collar. Now, you want to move this when you move it. You want to move it in the side so that you don't get off 0. That's kind of important. You know, think about where it would rotate. Where would that pivot rotate? I'm going to put it there. And then I'm going to do a side. All right. So now this one, this is where it gets tricky. Do you want the neck to be able to move independent? You want these to move when the neck moves or when the chest moves? I'm actually going to parent these to the chest, so that I have kind of independent control over each one of these. Now, what's weird about that is that I'll be able to bend this piece of metal if I want. So I'm going to have to make a control that will. So there'll be individual controls, and then I'll have to make another control. So I could make one master joint between the neck and the chest, that these are parented to, so I could create another control that would run just these, which is what I think I'm going to do. So I'm going to actually build another. I'm going to put a joint between this one and this one, which is going to put a control in there. That's kind of separate. So we'll try that. I'm going to do that by adding a joint using this resample node script he has. And so you pick the two joints, root and chest, which is wrong. I want chest, start joint, pick, and joint neck. And there's two joints now. I want three. Resample. And it's going to put one of them in the middle. Right? So now, that one's called chest 1. I'm just going to rename it, and I'm going to call it collar. And then I'm going to take that. Again, I want to make sure that my orientations are correct before I do anything funky. All right, everything is legit. Then I'm going to parent that one under that one. Boom. That one under that one. Boom. And that one under that one. Boom. Now what this is going to give me is individual control here, 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 and it's going to give me one more control under here. So I'm going to have to be careful when I bind this suit that I don't include this joint as a bindable joint when I go to actually bind the mesh. Otherwise it might mess up my weights a little bit. Okay, so I've got those, I've got that. There aren't any other holding weights. He doesn't have really clearly defined butt cheeks, so I'm not going to do those. So let's move on to the head area. All right. We know we're going to come off of that, so I'm going to put one right here. Go wham. I don't know how much I want this to move, but I'm going to give it, and I'm obviously going to have to move these. That kind of shape. So we'll put that in the center there. And we're going to move that one forward. One of the things you can do to make this easier is actually vert snap, holding V down, so you can kind of get a quickly place. Right, so I want it right about there. And then move it down inside. key is to definitely check your, by rotating around it and making sure it's where you think it needs to be so you get the orientation right. Because just because you grab the middle piece doesn't always mean that it's going to be right. It's going to be lined up. All right. Not bad. Okay. There we go. Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, all right. So I'm like, oh, I didn't rename them, right? All right, well, that's okay, because you can always do this. Ha ha ha. I can search replace names. And I can say, hey, I want to replace joint with J&T. And then I can use prefix hierarchy. And I can say, hey, I just want to add, we're going to call these head unit. We'll call it head cloth mic underscore. Boom, 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 and done. Now I'm just going to parent that straight to the head so that it moves when that joint moves. All right. Everything looks good. Grab all of these. Turn off joint axes. And I'm going to save it as a new version. And now comes the test. We're going to build and we're going to see if it gives me weird doubles on the centers or if it does anything strange up here. And we'll see what happens. So here we go. All right. So it looks like it actually did include, and it didn't give me more than one piece for the center. Hey, look at that. Awesome. Hey, look at that nightmare. So that mic isn't an exact duplicate. It is not symmetrical. Yay, that's an important thing to notice. So that means that if I want this to work, I'm gonna have to rig or build an asymmetrical fit skeleton to get this to work here. Or what I do is I don't include all of these down there, all the way down, right? And I just keep it, I put it as close to I can get it right here, and then this whole thing will move by itself, which is going to be the easier way of handling that because it'll get close enough that it won't, I don't need to be able to bend these anyway. They're supposed to be pretty stiff. So what do? We toggle the fit back and we delete it. And then I'm going to delete, select still. I'm going to delete those. Move that up a little bit. And let's turn on my joint axes and update them because I moved that. That should change a little bit. All right. And this worked okay. That looked fine. So let's try it again. All right, so it didn't. It actually, that actually looks like it's going to be okay-ish. I probably need to move it over inside more. And I'm definitely going to have to add another little joint so I can make that a control. All right, so toggle fit. Well, this time I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to move it. Move it right there-ish. And I'm going to dupe it. And I'm going to put it underneath that and move it forward so I can get a control. And bink, bink. Okay. And I am going to delete. I usually like deleting. You could try rebuild, but to me, delete always works the best because I'm absolutely sure everything's fine at that point. Okay, and I'm going to build it again. It's done some weird offsetting. See how that's offsetted? Those controls are offsetted. It's kind of weird. So let's see which ones this one's doing. I'll grab that one. Which one does it rotate? Hey, now that's a problem. So the controls are definitely wonked out. Very interesting there. Look at that. That's not even the right control. They're somehow flipped. And that's the head. The FK head got messed up. All right. So luckily I know what caused that. So let's take it all the way back. Go back to build pose. This is one of the dangers that you get when you start messing around with the skeleton system. So I'm going to unparent that. Right? Now, if I rebuild this now, in theory, this shouldn't be included in that. And we should get, see, because that's the head end, and then there's the head joint. So I'm going to update. And it's because, see how that axis got messed up? Watch what happens when I parent this, to the axis. And then I update. See that? It freaks out. It doesn't understand which way it's supposed to orient. It thinks that's the ladder joint. So we know that this is going to cause a problem. So we're going to unparent it. And we're going to update. Okay, that's all good. So what we can do is add another joint back here. Let's try that this time. So this time I'm going to click on it and I'm going to draw. Okay? And so now if I update, does the X change? Nope. So now in theory, I should be able to grab that to that and parent it. Oops. I want to parent this to this. Now watch. This axis shouldn't change. So for whatever reason, it just doesn't like you messing with that. So I had to create kind of a spacer bone to be able to put it in there so that it's in the hierarchy, it works, so that when it creates, as long as it's at zeros, it's not going to make a double joint. So now when I go to build it, watch what happens. Oh wait, I still got all these extra joints that I don't need. Delete. And I know that one's got to be over, but more. All right. An update. Okay, here we go. It still messed it up. Okay, so after a little bit of experimentation, what I discovered was, well, that I had to delete these joint structure, but the method I was doing worked. So once I deleted these joints and then added a joint in the back and parented everything, it was fine. So I'm going to redo it this time while I'm recording, so watch. All right, so far so good. Now we're going to build it. And there we go. So I guess the lesson here is that sometimes, it might have been something left over when I was deleting, unconnecting, disconnecting. Could have been the fact that I drew it from the joint. But going back and deleting can always help. It's also now I've also got a back of the head control, which could be very useful in terms of the cloth if I wanted to move it or slide it around. For whatever reason, but okie dokie. So that's ready to go. All those controls look pretty good. Now at this point, this is the point where in the rig where I look at how my controls look on the screen, and I ask myself, okay, do I need them to be bigger or smaller? And that's where I was using earlier. I went down to the control curve section and I was like, all right, I need these to be smaller, so I'm going to scale them down. I'm going to do that. I want this one to be smaller. Usually I work with halves. I feel pretty good about those. And that's right to left, so they'll just automatically drop down. And the one in the back actually could be bigger, but I'm looking for ones that are too big. None of them are too big, so I'm going to do 1.2. And this is where I go through and I make sure I turn off body and joint. And I say, oh, I'm going to scale it up a little bit. Boom. Okay. And if you want to offset them or move them, so like for instance, when you look at this, you see you want to keep the pivot, right? Well, what you can do is use the control vertexes and just grab the control vertex and pull them out at that point. So you can create kind of like your own custom control for it. So now I would just go through and kind of make all of my adjustments and tweak it all and get all the curves where I want before I go ahead and do one more bind to test it. All right, so I'll go ahead and do that now. So during the process of adjusting the curves, I discovered a similar problem with the chest orientation, the chest curve that we had with the head curve, because I directly parented these control joints here to the chest orientation. So if I were to click on the chest FK curve, notice, look at that, it's all messed up. And that's going to mess the spine up if we go to an IK spine. It could screw all kinds of things up. So in order to maintain with the FK to get that fixed, I'm going to have to do the same kind of fix that I did on this. Good thing I checked. Notice how I'm checking though is by going, you know, because it's inside, is by going to 4 so I can see the curve. And I'm like, hey, that shouldn't be that way. It should be horizontal like that. So I'm going to run a fix and be right back. All right, so while doing some test binding and adjusting the controls, I came across another problem that I didn't really see. And it has to do with the collar. So, which is this part right here. One of the things that I want to be able to do is independently move that collar around of the neck, so like I can, and because that's what's going to control the helmet. Well, when I was building the fit skeleton, I actually parented or put the collar joint in the middle there, right? So you think, oh yeah, it'll move just fine in the head, but the problem is the head moves with the whole thing. I want the suit and the helmet to move separate from the head. So that means I need to remove the collar joint and reparent all of these things under another joint. So I had to go back through and delete all of it, and this is what I ended up with for a fit skeleton. So now what you see is I have its own separate joint that's outside of that. And this is where the pivot's going to be, so it'll be much easier to move that. So now this is going to be there's the collar right there. Okay. And the chest is right here. So that's all good. So the collar's orientation's a little screwy, but I can just adjust the curve on that and everything would be fine. Or I could, actually like doing this, it's easier to grab it. Just do something like that. So then when I want to move it, the whole thing will move, which is nice. Again, keeping in mind that I have the ability to change the control curve color. And what I want you to notice is, see how it said everything? Because it did FK right. Instead of selected. Which is what I wanted. And it grabbed everything, selected, and everything that was right side. So, see how that one's got an R on it? Now, I haven't tried this, but we'll see if it'll let me do it. You can use the AM dock to also change the color on the curves if you want. One of the really cool features that he's got in here for the control curves is this idea of swapping the curve out. And so you can see I've done it already with 2 here. So I wanted to kind of illustrate the process that I would go through to do this, utilizing both the advanced skeleton and the control dock script. So I'm going to replace these guys up here with little cogs. So to do that, what I want to do is I'm going to bring a cog into the world, but I'm just going to get it at 0. So I'm going to click this, click cog, and I'm going to go orphan. And I'm going to, maybe scale it up just a little bit, but generally speaking, I'm going to leave it, slightly, because it's going to grab the scale from there. And I'm going to make it yellow because it will pull the color from it. So the way this works is you simply just grab the curve or all of the curves that you want to change. Then you grab the control curve that you're changing it to and you hit swap curve. Hey, look at that. Now I've got a bunch of cogs. Yay! So very, very, very useful. And they're named the right thing. They're hooked up to the joint properly. So it's much, much cooler. Now that's the collar one. So that one I'm actually going to change the control vertexes on. So let me hide the body for a second. Grab you, because I want this to be bigger. Ah, poopy. So I should also just be able to do this. And I can use this, or I can still use the control deck to change the curve's color. So either or, it totally works just fine. So that's update. So I'm going to go through now and kind of update and scale and set up all my curves. And then when we come back, the next thing I'm going to be showing you is selective binding, and I'm going to get that going on him.